Okay, friends, so we are now going to be drawing some drips on our paper to look like melted ice cream. So on the top, you're going to do about 2 large drips. And what you're going to create is some stretched out, really big wavy lines. So they're going to curve down and loop like this. The shape of yours might be a little different, but the key thing is to keep your edges rounded and really big. I'm not going to do one over here on this edge. And you can do 1 or 2 that overlap those ones. If you want to add a couple of drips too, you can. Want to make sure we don't overdo it with these because we are going to have to go in and paint later on, and we're going to need to have time for that. So just make sure that you're not drawing too many. Now I'm going to do some that are dripping on my table. I'm going to make mine look kind of more like puddles with some little splatters on the table. All right, friends, so now that I have that done, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, find one colored crayon to start out with, but you can choose as many colors as you want. I'm going to create values within my drips. I want the edges to be really dark and the inside to be light. So the trick to making your crayon dark is to push hard. And when you're doing the outline, I always get asked, well, how are we going to see our crayon when the outline was already Sharpied? So when you're doing this, if you notice, I'm really going a little bit outside that Sharpie line when I'm pushing hard so I can still see that color. After I've done that, I'm going to pull my hand back and I'm just going to push very lightly inside the shape. I'm going to work in circles. It's easier for you to just push too light because we can always darken it if we need to, but if you push too hard, you cannot lighten it. So when you're going and adding that light pressure, it's almost like it's barely touching the paper. So now I'm going to do this one again. I'm just going to go a little bit outside that Sharpie line so I can see it. Okay, I'm going to outline it really dark. Oops. And then I'm going to fill it in with light pressure, holding the middle of the crayon, working in circles, and very lightly touching the paper. I'm going to go ahead and do the big drips and the ones that are falling on the table. I'm not doing anything in the negative space or the background yet because that's going to be done. As you can see, my drips were done with a thick, dark outline, and then I filled them in very lightly. We're now going to paint the background, and you want your top and bottom colors to be very different from one another. What you're going to do is you are going to be using a watercolor palette today. And with the watercolor palette, you have to use a little water to make it work. But sometimes friends use too much water. You really don't need a lot of water. Most of the water should be on your paper and brush. Sometimes these have already been used throughout the day, so they might already be a little wet. You're going to add some water to your brush, and believe it or not, sometimes it looks like there's not any paint in there, but like, for example, with this blue, any little paint, like even this edge here, is going to pick that water up and change it to the watercolor you need. So even a little bit will work. You're going to get water, and you're going to pick any of the colors you would like. Now, my drips are blue, and my popsicle's purple, so maybe I want to think in terms of the opposite of those colors. Maybe I want a warm color, so I'm going to do an orange in mine. I'm going to remember I hold my bristle by the gripper, or hold my paintbrush by the gripper, and even when I'm adding my brush to that paint, I'm very gentle on it. I'm going to start by outlining around my drip. Now, the longer you leave your brush in the paint, the darker it's going to be. Once I get the first dripped outline, I'm going to paint around it. I can add a little water to help spread it out a little more and make it lighter as I'm working. So the more water you add to your paper, the lighter your watercolor is going to be. You're then going to outline around your popsicle and then do your other drips. Once you have that done, you're going to work to the bottom. So I'm not done with mine yet, but I want to go on to the bottom. I would pick a different color, outline, and then fill in the areas. so that by the time you're done, you have something like this. Okay, friends, so it's very important you change the colors because otherwise it's going to look a little weird. If both the top and bottom are the same, it's going to look like you have a line just going through the middle of your paper. So make sure you're changing it and make sure that you're washing your brush between colors.